Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 2nd San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting. I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan. Here. Commissioner Olsinger.
Here.
Commissioner Paravano.
Here.
Commissioner Tucker.
Here.
President Bernardo.
Here. Public comments. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any, so staff recognition.
Nothing from manager at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Consent calendar, items 1 and 2, minutes of meeting March 5th, 2014, and minutes of meeting March 19th, 2014.
So move the consent calendar.
I'd like to take them off consent.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Well, she's taking it off consent calendar, so
Oh,
now...
right, that's right.
Now we need to do a new motion to approve the minutes after we've gone through them.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and we're taking them off the consent, so why don't we take item number 1, minutes of meeting March 5th, 2014.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion on March 5th meeting minutes?
I have a couple comments.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
So,
Excuse me, we can barely hear you, Commissioner.
Our apologies. We'll try to speak up. Sorry, we'll try to project out that way.
the acoustics were a real problem last time we were here, and it seems that this is not a good space for our meetings because of the acoustics. And I'd hoped that that would have been addressed by this meeting. So I just want to also voice some serious concerns about the problems with acoustics in this space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have lots of things that I think should be changed about these minutes. Based on past meetings, I know the board isn't going to agree with me on that. So I just wanted to state that I'm going to be voting not to approve these minutes because I see that there are corrections that are needed, and also because the public comment is not recorded in the minutes. It simply lists the name of the public member but doesn't say if they were in support or opposed to the item that they spoke on. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Call for the question.
Thank you. So let's have the vote on meeting minutes of March 5th, 2014. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
So motion carries. Item number 2, minutes of meeting March 19th, 2014.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Are there any questions?
Just
Regarding-
my last comment applies to these as well.
Okay, noted, thank you. All in favor of meeting minutes March 19th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
One opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, and I just got a speaker card from, I'm sorry, Todd, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your last name? Korth. Korth, okay. If you'd like to come up here to the front, thank you.
Is this general comments?
Yes, this is general comments. This is-
Yeah, so I'm going to hand a little 3 pages to each of you, and I introduced myself to you a few meetings ago and wanted to make sure that I wasn't...
Thank you.
I was compliant with all rules and present to all of you at the same time. So I grew up in the Bay Area fishing with my dad. He was a police
Can we,
officer.
I'm sorry, can we hold off until you
Okay.
get to the mic so we
Got
can
it.
make sure we have it all recorded?
So my name's Todd Korth, and I was born here in the Bay Area, fished with my dad when I was a little kid out of Santa Cruz. He was a police officer. And I worked in high tech for a long time, and actually with Sun Microsystems for many years, and then moved back to the Bay Area and kind of got back into fishing about 4 or 5 years ago, and had a boat called the Bluefin that I fished. I bought it from Leroy Reiner down in Santa Cruz, who's well known here, an excellent machinist. So I fished that boat for 4 years in Alaska, and then recently I bought a boat called the New Day, which is a unique vessel that's now here in the harbor. and I still fish in Alaska, but it's actually a freezer troller. And if you look in the seafood industry, around the world, there is a big issue called seafood fraud, which is where people misrepresent the product that they're selling. And the first piece of paper that I have is a picture of a sign that is right in our backyard. And I was a little bit alarmed when I saw the sign for fresh whole king salmon right around Christmas time at the little market down here. And I went in, and sure enough, they're selling Atlantic salmon as king salmon. Blatant fraud. Just a perfect example. If you go into some of the other markets over in Milpitas, I've seen this before. So the next piece of paper is my license in Alaska to actually process on my vessel. And the difference with Alaska is they actually allow you to, fillet, vacuum pack, full processing on a boat. We go through what we call the DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. They basically conduct the FDA inspection on the boat, make sure all our cutting tools, boards, everything are all, food grade materials. And I've got a blast freeze in the boat, so we've actually take, the whole fish, which is the bulk of the product, we take them down to -30, -40. And if you look up, Google sashimi grade, I mean, it's required when you take the temperature down to those sustained deep cold temperatures. And that removes risks of all types of contaminants. And so, I have my own, label for Salaska Gourmet Seafood, which is, my brand, and had brought that down to the harbor. And when I filled out the form for the selling seafood off the boat, I stapled that permit on the back of it, and a little bit of a misunderstanding. I was, selling shrimp, excellent spot prawns, frozen. And there was no issues with that, but the actual vacuum pack fillets in the box, there was an issue, and we had it, and he suggested that I come in and present to you, so this is why I'm here. And I'd like to get an exception. So part of the rules of the harbor state that they want only whole fish sold. And I completely understand the spirit of that, is because what you don't want is somebody with a fish out of ice on a board that's not food grade. And if it's not frozen, you fillet, you have risks of all types of contaminants. But when we do that on the boat, within an hour of it coming out of the water, it gets filleted, vacuum packed, put in a box, dropped into a freezer, and taken down to -30 or 40. It is absolutely the safest seafood product that anybody can buy in San Mateo County. And so a lot of customers had come down and bought product from me, and they had called back, no customer satisfaction. People very passionate about that. They see this sign and they know that, they've been in this market and they know that there's issues. And when the people come to me, they know that I'm building a trusted brand with a product that is extremely safe, completely traceable seafood. People can't go into a grocery store and buy beef or buy chicken or any other product and really know where it comes from. But for me, they certainly can tell that. So the last piece of paper, and then I'll turn it back over to you, is an example of another fisherman up in Alaska, Mark Hoffman and his family, and they have a company called Troller Point. The boat name is Ocean Oasis, same exact thing that I do. And these are all the ports in Washington that they go around, and they have a long following over the years. And, they sell the same vacuum pack product, whole product, etc., all throughout the state of Washington. So my request to you, the commission, is to give me an exception to be able to continue to sell this product is one option. Another option could be to change the rules to allow for anybody with a licensed processor vessel from Alaska or any other state to be able to do this, because it's great for consumers, it's good product, and it also draws people to the harbor. And the last point I will make is that all of my products are complimentary, because I come back from Alaska in the November time frame, and there's no salmon on the market, and everybody's selling crab, so my products are in no way, shape, or form competitive to anyone else. And it's actually great because it creates continuity of supply, with people able to come down and buy some different products, and it gets more and more people into the harbor.
Thank you, Mr. Korth. Thank you.
Mr. President, as you know, we cannot respond to you because you're not on the agenda.
Okay.
So we can't have any kind of interaction. So my question is to Mr. Grinnell. Has he applied for a commercial activity permit?
No.
Well, it seems to me that without communicating with you, that if I were in his position, I would apply for a commercial activity permit. And if and when you should deny that, he could appeal to us, and it could appear on the agenda, we could deal with the situation.
And as a way of assisting before that, he should check with the regulations, because what the Harbor District currently provides for at Pillar Point Harbor is in compliance with county regulations, and so we are limited. We could not respond to his request. And that was one of the original guide points when the Harbor Commission decided to allow off-the-boats retail sales. So if he is interested in doing a little research with the regulations that would apply, then there might be a question of us working with San Mateo County to possibly do something, but it's a bit bigger than just the Harbor Commission.
My products are completely compliant with the FDA.
Yeah, I'm talking about San Mateo County.
But if
Not the federal.
If I could, excuse me, this isn't meant to be a discussion,
Okay.
so I'd like to conclude the,
I have a question for the general manager.
sure, Commissioner Brennan.
Just so I understand better, what rules are we talking about that the county has that need to be looked into? Where does one find those?
All and every regulation that they have that may apply.
To
I
fishing?
can't give you a listing right now.
Who would you contact at the county to look into that? If I
County
want to
Department
look
of
in,
Health Services.
I'm sorry, say that again?
County Department of Health Services.
Okay.
You would approach Dean Peterson, but he's just retiring, so whoever his successor is.
Well, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Korth. Thank you. Okay, we are at agenda setting now. Commissioners? Commissioner Holsinger.
No request.
Okay, Commissioner Tucker.
I have none.
Commissioner Paravano. Okay. Commissioner Brennan.
I have a couple things.
Okay.
So, the first is, back in March, I think it was March 6th of 2013, this board had a financial planning and just planning in general for capital improvement projects workshop, which was held at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club. And it's my understanding, based on attending those planning workshops in the past, that it's a regular yearly event that we, as a board, have a planning workshop each year around March 6th. And we review the budget at that workshop, and we look at PowerPoint presentations related to the budget and related to capital improvement projects. And that hasn't happened this year, and so do I need to ask for it as an agenda item so that we could agree to do it, or is it already scheduled? I guess is a question for the general manager.
Right, I'd like to ask Mr. Grinnell, would you like to just comment on can you explain sort of our budget process and where we're at right now?
Yes, on tonight's agenda is the introduction of the first draft preliminary budget for fiscal 2014-15.
Okay.
That will start the budget process.
Okay, and then can you just kind of walk us through, so this starts the budget process, and then what happens next? If you could just kind of, for the benefit of the audience too.
Past practice has been for, and this is always done at a public hearing item, past practice has been that the Harbor Commission then continues that public hearing on the budget until such time as you adopt and fix the final budget, which typically has happened in late June. And so every board meeting agenda will have the public hearing on the budget. As part of that process, by statute, the Harbor District must first adopt a preliminary budget and then allow for a period of public review and comment, not less than 30 days. And so past practice has been, in recent years, that the preliminary budget has been adopted at the first meeting of May, the first week of May, and then it is brought back for final decision the second meeting in June. Now that leaves 2 more board meetings in between. The public hearing will continue where you can take further public comment and make any other adjustments in the meantime.
Okay.
That's the basic process for the budget.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up, though, to Commissioner Brennan's question, what about that forum like we did in recent years, where it's like a half-day session where we discuss just budgets and
Yes.
things like that? So
Yes, it has been past practice for the last quite a few years for harbor commissions to have annual finance and priorities budget workshops. That's what both of you are referring to. And basically, the content of those workshops includes a review by finance staff of the current financial status of the Harbor District in terms of revenue, costs. Typically, we've tried to have these workshops after the mid-year budget review so you can know also what the current status is looking forward for the rest of the actual current fiscal year as part of that. Then moving forward, you have in the past reviewed status of and progress on achieving a set of priorities that you established and have previously updated at these annual workshops. Having done that, you then have ended the process by updating those priorities based on some may have been achieved, others have been reduced in importance for various reasons, depends on what they are, new ones may be added, and so on and so forth. That's been the basic process and content of that. Staff has not proposed scheduling such a workshop this year because we are about to start the major comprehensive strategic planning process, which you acted on at the previous board meeting. And rather than get tangled up with too many workshops, as you know from having reviewed the proposal that you approved, there is a whole process laid out. And so staff felt that it was appropriate, much more effective and efficient to follow along with the strategic planning process, which will be dealing with everything that you would normally deal with in the other workshops. Now, again, the strategic planning process is going to come up with a document, but make no mistake, this document is a working document. You would then resume your annual workshop process and refer to that document, update it, and move on in later years, you see. So
Okay,
basically at this point, we would say there's no reason to have that at this time.
okay, thank you. Did you have any other
I
questions?
do. So the finance workshop that we've had every March in the past is very different than a public workshop that would be put on by our strategic planning consultants. I don't see a connection between the two, and I don't see why the strategic plan public workshops should cancel out a financial planning workshop, which has always been, as far as I can recall, the thing that the district does. So I'm very concerned about that because I rely on that process to really digest the budget and to, see a presentation on the budget, to be able to ask a lot of questions, have our finance director go over it with us, and I'm concerned that now it's April and we haven't done that yet. So I'd like to do that.
So, I'm sorry, Commissioner Brennan, so basically, since we're on agenda setting, is this, I assume your question is related to something you want on the agenda? Is that-
Well, I don't see why it needs to be on the agenda, but we need to have the workshop. So if you want me to
Right.
put it on the agenda, I don't
Okay.
know the right process.
This is since we're on agenda setting, I was assuming that your question was related to something that you did want to put on the agenda.
Is the only way for us to have a finance workshop like we always have every March, for me to ask to have it put on the agenda and then to have it come back at the next meeting for us to vote on, or what would be the best process for that?
Well, based on what I'm hearing, that would be a suggestion for you, is to ask to put it on, because it sounds like it wasn't in the works because of the strategic planning that we're doing.
And we don't have any schedule for a strategic planning workshop at this point, so that's out in the future somewhere. We don't have any,
Okay.
we haven't even finalized the contract with the strategic planning group yet.
Understood. So, Mr. Grinnell, did you have something to say?
Yes, in the interest of transparency and understanding, I think we need to distinguish between apples and oranges here. And in fact, what Commissioner Brennan seems to be looking for will occur in the course of the budget preparation process. For example, on April 16th, our next board meeting, we will have our first budget workshop. And we've scheduled that at a special time with a special amount of time available to start the process of examining our finances and our budget and so on. And it's just the kind of thing that Commissioner Brennan is talking about. So that will be taken into account in the budget process.
What is that?
Okay, now, if I may finish, there was a reference to a strategic planning workshop by the consultants. That is not necessarily what may happen, and it's not exactly what was stated in their proposal. In fact, they have suggested when it comes to public involvement, participation, and process, they're talking about several different methods over that period, including public meetings, one-on-one interviews, advisory committee activity,
Okay.
workshops, and so on. And that's a whole different deal.
Okay, understood. Thank you. So let's right now get back to the original topic, which I think the original question was the budget meetings that we used to have.
And now I'm more confused, because now I'm hearing that we are going to have a special meeting, which is going to be a workshop on the budget at a special time. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is our annual process. We've been doing that for several years.
But we do that in March. We have the workshop in March.
We do that when the schedule provides for it as soon as possible.
And
In
what
this
will-
particular instance, you may recall that the budget was on a previous agenda and was not able to be taken up at that meeting. Otherwise, we'd be 2 weeks farther along in the process.
Well-
And so staff has provided to put it on as soon as possible.
Will that be a workshop at the yacht club again? where
That
it's
is
a
correct.
A half-day workshop?
No, it will not be half-day. It's at 3 p.m. It'll go for a couple of hours, and it's the beginning of a process. You will have, at every board meeting until June, an opportunity to probe as deeply as you want into the budget.
And what date will that be?
April 16th. It's the third Wednesday. It's the regular meeting date for the Harbor Commission.
So it'll be a regular meeting, but it'll start at 3 o'clock?
It will be a special meeting for the budget workshop, followed by a regular agenda at 6 p.m.
Okay, so just to move things along so that we will have time for the budget portion on item number 7.
Yes.
Is there anything else on this, we're on agenda setting right now.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to request a performance evaluation of the general manager. Since I've been on this board for about a year and a half, we have not had any performance evaluation of the general manager. I don't know, why it's taken so long, but it seems overdue. So
Motion.
I move that we do that.
Okay, I hear a motion to place on the next,
And it would be a closed session
okay, in a
item.
closed session item, the review for the general manager. Do I hear a second? Okay, actually, I'm going to second it for procedural purposes, and then I have a question. So motion made, seconded by myself. Are there any questions? Okay, I have a question actually from council. The question is regarding the general manager's performance evaluations. Can you kind of outline sort of the process of how that works? This is just for just so that the public understands what this is about.
Sure. Public employees have performance evaluations on a periodic basis, and those performance evaluations are conducted in closed session. That's a allowed closed session under the Brown Act.
Okay.
And that's an opportunity in closed session for a governing board to meet with whatever employee they are evaluating and to have a conversation about that employee's performance, to help set goals for the following year for the employee.
Thank you. So it's routine. I mean, it's a routine.
Yes, it is.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan.
How many years has it been since the last performance evaluation for the general manager? It's a question for Jean.
I'm sorry, sitting here, I don't know how long ago. I can get that information for you. I'm sorry, I don't know it sitting here.
Thank you.
Okay. So I hear a motion and a second. Any other questions? Let's do roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
No.
Commissioner Caruana?
No.
Commissioner Tucker?
No.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion fails. So Commissioner Brennan, any other agenda setting items?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving right along to new business. Item number 3, retention of maritime legal services, Cox Wooten Lerner. Mr. Grinnell.
Yes, this is an urgent matter of some importance to the Harbor District in reference to a specific case plus a number of other cases coming down the line. For past history purposes, the district has, on at least one recent instance, sought outside special counsel for particular purposes, in this case real estate. This time we're seeking maritime legal expertise to address a particularly difficult case that we can go into if you wish at this point. But in any case, we have sought outside counsel. We had recourse to General Counsel Savory and Assistant General Counsel to help identify a likely firm. They are with us tonight, Cox, Wooten, and Lerner, and I would like to introduce Mitchell Griffin.
I'm sorry, before we go into that, just for the sake of the members of the public here tonight who haven't looked at the agenda item specifically, and the people who are watching us tonight who haven't looked at the agenda, can you please kind of just briefly give us the background for this? What is the impetus for this agenda item?
Certainly, I'll do that, and as needed, ask Harbor Master Grindy to back me up further.
Thank you.
The case in question is, you may recall, the cruise and special event vessel, the Spirit of Sacramento, which asked for a commercial activity permit to operate out of Oyster Point Marina. That was approved. The boat also asked for and received a berth. And then in short order, we started receiving a bunch of bounce checks. They weren't paying their bills. They were causing disturbances in the harbor, complaints from the yacht club, and basically we had some issues. It's a federally documented vessel, and that's what gave rise to the need for outside counsel, because it's a very different situation than a vessel that is simply registered with DMV in Sacramento. And so the problem is that boat is taking up valuable space that we could be renting to another vessel, so we're losing revenue aside from what they're not paying us. and it's sitting there.
Thank you.
And there's more. We've also investigated with law enforcement, and we're checking into the potential for a felony fraud action. So this is a serious business. Now, additionally, there are other federally documented vessels at both Pillar Point and Oyster Point. And so this is an excellent opportunity for staff to get educated with our general counsel on the important fine points of maritime law as they may apply to the circumstances that we have. And so staff recommends most vigorously that we move forward on this. So
Thank you
with
for
that background,
thank you for
if
that.
that's adequate.
Oh, that's very helpful for me
Good.
in
I
trying
have
to
a couple
understand.
questions when it's my turn.
So why don't we do this? We have questions from commissioners. I know you're eager to introduce the maritime law team here. So I think, why don't you introduce them and then have the commissioners ask questions, and then you can both kind of tag team on the answers.
Yes,
How's
that's
that?
fine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Commissioner Tucker.
Mr. President, if I may, then just for procedural purposes, I'd like to place a motion on the floor that we approve the general manager's request to solicit outside legal firm of Cox, Wooden, and Lerner Maritime Law at an amount not to exceed $5,000. I would so move.
Okay, I hear a motion. Okay, do I hear a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I hear a motion and second. Okay, so we have the motion. So let's get to the questions. Or was there another? That was your-
The only follow-up question was, and I put it in the motion, as I read through the report, it talked about not to exceed 5,000 in one place, and then it talked about things going over 5,000. So I assume we're going to spend less than 5,000 on this?
We hope that's the case.
Well, if the motion
We
passes,
don't
then
know
you
for
can't go
certain,
beyond that, but
depending
you come back
upon
to
the
us.
nature of the specific case. But we anticipate that it shouldn't be particularly costly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you. So this is a question for Jean. Jean, was it your recommendation that we needed to seek outside counsel because of the fact that this was a federally documented vessel? Is that?
Yes, Harbor Master Grindy approached me with some questions. It is not an area in which our firm practices, so we were asked to explore possibilities for outside counsel. This firm comes highly recommended, and that's why we have recommended them to you this evening.
Okay, thank you. And then this business about fraud, in addition to all the other problems, is that something that can be explained, or is that private?
I would suggest that that would be something that should be handled, any further explanation by way of a confidential memo to the board.
Okay. And then I remember this came up recently. We approved this commercial activity permit. What month was that?
I can't recall.
So that was like a couple months.
It's in your packet, right?
November. Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
there it is. My apologies. November 6, 2013.
Okay. And at the time, it was brought to the board as an emergency item. I'm trying to remember if it wasn't even on the agenda and it got added as an emergency commercial activity permit. I know that there were a number of members of the public that were concerned about the emergency nature of it. And after we approved it, based on staff recommendation, I was contacted about the fact that this vessel had had problems at another harbor, and concerns about that from the public. But at that point, it was too late. Have we learned anything about maybe not doing emergency commercial activity permits? I'd kind of like to hear from staff about, how we could prevent this sort of thing from happening going forward.
I think it has nothing to do with whether it's an urgency item or not. I think what we have learned from this thus far would be that we need to do further due diligence on folks who are applying for commercial activity permits. And if it means that it takes longer, so be it.
So that would mean more reference checking and that sort of thing?
Correct.
Okay. Then the last question I have is, what is the hourly rate for the firm that staff is recommending?
I think this is a good segue. Mr. Grinnell, would you like to introduce?
Yes, I'll do
our
that,
guests?
and I'm sure you'll get an answer to your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have with us tonight Mitchell Griffin, Mark Cefello, and Juliet McCullough from the firm of Cox Wood and Lerner. And they're here to answer questions, make a brief statement.
Hi, I'm Mitch Griffin. I'm the managing partner at Cox Wood and Lerner, Griffin, Hansen, and Polis. And I've got with me Mark Cefello is there, and he's a partner of the firm, and Juliet McCullough is one of our associates. And I'm here, to answer any questions you have about our experience and background or anything else. I heard a question about rates.
Yes. Can you please just sort of outline what your sort of rate schedule is, or how that works?
Yeah, our Mark and Juliet would be the people who would be addressing this matter, this initial matter. Mark's hourly rate is $350 an hour, and Juliet is $275.
Okay, thank you.
Is 5,000 going to be enough?
I can't really say. I mean, great lawyer answer. What I know about this matter is what I heard just now. We did look at the abstract of title on this vessel, which is a public document, just to get a little background, but I really don't know enough about it. I can say that, we arrest vessels often. We would hope not to have to arrest this vessel. The first line of action, I think, would be to try to negotiate this person out of the harbor. But if it went through to an arrest and a marshal's sale and so forth, it would be more than $5,000, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Thank you, that helps a lot.
And one more question. Have you at your firm run across this vessel before, or is this a new?
I think I have defended the prior owners personally of this vessel in a personal injury case about 15 years ago. After looking at the abstract of title, I recognize who I think are the prior owners, and I, through their insurers. But other than that, in terms of some stories about whether this vessel had problems in other locations in the bay, no, I don't think we've come across it in recent years.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners?
Yeah, I don't know whether this should be addressed to you, Mr. Griffin, or to District Manager Grinnell, but it would be my assumption, and tell me whether I'm right or wrong, that the initial retainer would be for advice and counsel, and representation, if there was to be representation for an arrest, legal representation, would be something that would be come back for because it would be more expensive for consideration by the Commission. Is that a misunderstanding on my part?
Well, I can tell you, perhaps I can answer the question. I mean, in a matter like this, if you were a private marina, let's say, and you came to us with this problem, we very well may ask for a $5,000 retainer and tell you that we will review the facts, review the documentation, do investigation, give you initial recommendations. We'll eat up some of that $5,000 there, and perhaps we've got the whole thing contained then based upon our review at $5,000. But
So the next step would be representation if necessary.
Well, I think we would be retained right at the outset.
Okay, all right.
As we're retained to review the matter and give you our initial recommendations, and if everything went perfectly right, we might be able to resolve the thing within that initial $5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioners?
I have a follow-up question. Mr. Griffin, thank you for showing up today. Do you have an idea of the scope of work that you're going to be doing? I see here in the staff report it talks about checks that were not that were paid insufficient funds, and also the removal of the vessel from the Oyster Point Marina. Are there other issues that you're going to be looking into?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, my understanding is that the current goals are to try to collect the fees due and get this vessel out of the harbor. That would be the home run. once again, my understanding of what the facts are is somewhat limited, but that's my understanding of the scope of the project.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, on behalf of the commission, thank you for being here tonight. My cousin, by the way, is a maritime lawyer, so I'm familiar with the highly specialized work that you deal with.
He's one of the 30 of us.
It's a very unique field. So, thank you.
Question?
Yes. So, just for the record, the motion was made by Commissioner Tucker and seconded by Commissioner Paravano. Okay. Since this vote is related to money, especially $5,000, let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to other legal matters. Item number 4, request for proposals for district council legal services. Mr. Grinnell?
Yes. As you know, the firm of Aronson Dickerson Cohn Lanzone has indicated that they do not propose to seek a renewal or extension of their existing contract when it expires soon, and have recommended that the district issue a request for proposals to seek a successor for general counsel legal services. And that is what is before you tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, commissioners.
Move approval.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. Any questions from the commissioners on this item?
I have a question for Jean. So Jean, I know that your firm has, been with the district for a really long time, and I'm wondering if you have any advice for us on the types of maybe skills and experience that we should be looking for in future counsel?
Yeah, I assisted Mr. Grinnell in putting together the request for proposals language, and I think it has in it the kind of calls for submittals and proposals with the kind of information that will help you evaluate that. And I've indicated to Mr. Grinnell, and I'll indicate to you, I would be happy to assist you in any way I can in that interview process or in evaluating the firms who will bid. But I think your RFP fairly well describes the services that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay. So let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along, we are at continued business item number 5, which is additional task for GHD Incorporated Pillar Point Harbor West Mavericks Trail Phase 1 repairs. Mr. Grinnell.
Yes. As you know, the West Trail at Pillar Point is in need of repair, and we've also identified opportunities for improvements over and above simple maintenance repair. And as you also will recall, the firm of GHD has been under contract to the Harbor District and has previously prepared a condition survey for the trail. And in the course of doing that, identified areas that were more severely in need of repair, as well as looking at the overall trail alignment. And again, just for public interest, the trail alignment basically runs from the district's parking lot at Pillar Point Marsh out to what is popularly known as the Mavericks Beach at the foot of the west arm of the federal breakwater. and the area that is subject to the most severe erosion is located closer to the trailhead at the parking lot. The sources of the erosion are basically twofold. One is storm runoff coming down the hill from the Pillar Point Air Force Station, which runs down the hill and goes across the trail and basically has been wearing down the trail edge. Secondly, there are wind waves and tidal fluctuations in the outer harbor that have also worn down the bluff edge supporting the trail. And so we have contacted the Coastal Commission, and they have agreed and in fact suggested to us that we do proceed with the project basically in two phases. Phase one, as we've stated in the report, would be to do immediate repairs on the most severely eroded portion so that we can keep the trail open for public use. And it is important to recognize that the trail also is used from time to time by emergency vehicles. And the erosion is getting to a point in a couple of locations where it's almost too narrow for such vehicles to maneuver. So it really is a critical thing. The Coastal Commission staff have recognized that and said that, in fact, while they would like to see a permit application for the entire project, they're prepared to go with two phases. So phase one is the immediate repair, which is before you tonight in terms of going ahead with this. Phase two would consist of maintenance, repairs, and improvements to the entire trail alignment for the rest of the trail, and two new improvements. One would be provision of a new restroom to replace the portable toilets that are out there now, and that's a potential grant-funded item. And then secondly, doing improvements to the parking lot. And I should point out at this stage that neither the trail nor the parking lot will we pave. In other words, it will continue to be unpaved, but we have researched and we know that there are a great many varieties of treatments that are not macadam or concrete, that are much more environmentally sensitive, that can absorb water and are low maintenance, and that's the approach we will take. We know that there's a lot of public interest in this trail, a lot of public use, and the general feeling, and we've heard at least from Midcoast Community Council, for example, that that's the kind of approach they'd like to see us take, and we agree with that. And so that's what we would be building into the permit application for phase two. I should also point out that the actual trail improvements should also, well, they're potentially grant fundable from the Coastal Conservancy, and we'll be approaching them as well to help defray costs there. And so,
Mr. Grinnell, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just again, for the benefit of the public and also the people who are watching this, GHD, what do they do?
They are an engineering firm. They have been working with the Harbor District most recently on putting together the engineering necessities to obtain a coastal permit to replace the dock fingers that Commissioner Brennan brought to the board's attention some time ago. And we're moving concurrently on that project. That's a separate item.
Okay,
but basically it's an engineering firm.
Thank you.
With considerable experience with all of this kind of stuff.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioners?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Grinnell, you said that they're a survey and engineering firm. So Have they done any other work for the district that has involved actual work rather than surveying or calculation?
Yeah. Well, again, they're an engineering firm. They're not a construction firm. So
Right.
given that understanding, the most recent thing that they've worked with us on is the dredging of the Pillar Point boat launch ramp.
And do they actually do that themselves? Do they actually do that themselves?
No, they're not a construction firm. They're an engineering firm.
So who would do the work on the actual work?
We would seek bids from qualified construction firms.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some questions. So it seems like we're missing part of the process here, and I kind of understand why GHD would be involved right now with coming up with some sort of a remedy to the eroding trail that I agree is going to impact emergency access. If you haven't been out there, the trail has eroded about halfway, and so now you could easily fit a golf cart through, but to fit a truck through or a ambulance or paramedics would be challenging. So that I understand where an engineering firm would be able to help with that part, and I guess that's what we're approving tonight, is just that part?
That's correct.
Okay. As far as the phase 2 that you went into, it seems like, and that's involved with the parking lot and the restroom facility and what have you, it seems like that would need the attention of some sort of a consultant that specializes in transportation, parking, and we've already, we approved the strategic plan, which part of the team is, Nelson Nygaard is included in the team, and they're experts at transportation and parking planning and that sort of thing. It seems that they should be involved in giving input and review on the GHD plans. Is that the intention?
The intention is as follows. First, we will have total concentration on phase 1 because it's a real urgency situation, and the Coastal Commission understands that. When we are basically moving forward on that, which translates to the hiring of a construction firm to actually do the repairs, and that's underway, we can then turn to developing the permit application for the rest of the trail alignment and the restroom and the parking lot improvements. GHD does have some competence for some of this stuff. Again, we are aware, for example, that when it comes to restrooms, there are different alternative ways of approaching this that we can research with them. For example, there are basically precast, ready-to-install units, a variety of those that you can acquire and put into place. You don't necessarily have to build a new structure from the ground up.
Okay,
that
if I
kind
may,
of thing.
I'm sorry. I think we're getting a little too much into the weeds here. Can we keep it kind of higher level at this point?
So I guess the question is just, I would like to be sure that we're not excluding this from the strategic planning process, because obviously this trail access is a really important feature at Pillar Point Harbor, and since we have such an excellent team, brought together by Lisa Wise Consulting, which includes Nelson Nygaard, it would be a shame not to make sure that they had input on this plan.
And actually, if I may respond, Mr. President, that's a very good point that Commissioner Brennan is making, and because of the phased nature of the project, that provides that opportunity to do that kind of thing, including when we get truly comprehensive, a long-term question as to whether or not the Harbor District might wish to continue managing that trail or possibly transfer it to another entity. The point here being that that trail generates zero revenue to the Harbor District. So that's something that is just the kind of thing that the strategic planning process could address.
Very long term, thank you, yes.
And I think that the other point is just that our question is, there needs to be a public process for reviewing this, and I know that since the Coastal Commission has to look at it, I would assume that would, are they planning on giving some sort of emergency permit that doesn't involve any public input, or what's the story with that?
A good question again. Our understanding currently of the Coastal Commission, there's two parts to this. Coastal Commission process will be, we will submit our application for the Phase 1 repairs. That will go, as we understand it now, before the Coastal Commission in a public session in their normal way. We had originally asked for an emergency permit that would not have, it could have been done administratively. They said, well, that doesn't really meet our guidelines. However, we understand the urgency and we'll try to expedite it as much as possible. So as far as the Coastal Commission is concerned, yes, that would come before the Coastal Commission. We'll keep you apprised of the date when it would be on a Coastal Commission agenda. Secondly, in terms of the Harbor District's public process, we intend to continue the process that we began last year. You may recall that we arranged a public meeting on a Saturday to enable many of the public to attend as possible. It was video recorded, and that session was created to bring before the public and receive comments and questions what the Harbor District's current outlook is about dredging and erosion control at Pillar Point Harbor. And on the website there is documentation about that. We now intend for this specific trail project, Phase 1, to hold another public meeting on a weekend, probably a Saturday, again, video recorded, to update the public and let them know exactly how we're approaching this entire project and what's in store, and then get comments and so on. For example, just to mention one thing, we will reiterate something that we know is of public interest, namely what the surface treatment of the trail and the parking lot will be. We'll say, no, we are not going to pave it. You know, this type of thing.
Thank you. Just moving things right along here. Commissioner Brennan, was there any follow-up questions?
Well, it's interesting because the more the general manager talks, the more I'm learning, and I did not know that the Coastal Commission had denied the emergency permit. That's newsworthy to me, so I'm really glad to find that out. I also want to mention that this project is appealable to the Coastal Commission, which means that it is really critical that we have a healthy public process and the community is able to give input. And I think it's also a reason why we might want to invite our strategic planning consultants to be at least somewhat informed about the project, because clearly the public's going to be involved, and this plan and the way that we address the trail and the parking lot might have implications for other locations, at Pillar Point Harbor. I don't know about Oyster Point Marina. There may be some crossover there and reason to think about consistency and a reason why this should be incorporated into the strategic planning process. So that's kind of all I want to say about that. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And one last thing, if I may, in response to that, those consultants
please just wrap it up.
Certainly will be apprised of all of this. As you may recall, one of the elements of the strategic plan is going to refer to capital facilities. We have, as you know, already underway a facilities condition survey for both harbors. So all of that is going to be part of this. This trail will be built into that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Commissioners, do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve the recommendation as stated in the item number 5 of the agenda packet.
Thank you. I hear a
I'll
motion. Do I
second.
hear a second?
I'll
Thank you.
second.
I hear a second. Since this involves an amount not to exceed $77,090, let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Terrabonne?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving right along. Item number 6, minutes of meeting February 19. February 19. Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes as corrected on page 7 of 12.
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion in a second. I'm sorry, just quick question. This is like a really old meeting minutes. Can I just ask staff really quickly? I assume this is a carryover from before. It was something
Yes, it
that
was.
needed some...
That is correct.
Some edits or something?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I hear motion second. Any questions?
Was this the agenda where the closed session items were mixed up, the numbers?
No, this was the minutes where the motion was said to pass when it didn't pass, so the motion actually failed.
Could we get clear on which agenda item was corrected?
Page 7
On
of 12.
page 7.
It's page... I saw some redlining in here, so page 7 of 12. Yeah, at the top of page 7 of 12, there's kind of redlined edits.
Okay, so that was, which agenda item? That was agenda item 9, information and possible action on accounts receivable records reports. And it was said at the meeting to have passed, but in actuality, it failed. And so it's been corrected in the minutes to reflect that that motion by Commissioner Brennan, seconded by Bernardo, to approve option 2 on the list of alternative courses of action to provide accounts receivable reports that redact only tenant names and birth numbers, provide tenant account numbers. The motion failed, but yeah. So then, so we were told the motion passed, but it actually failed. Is that? I thought we already changed this. I'm confused.
It was a motion made by Tucker and seconded by Paravano to approve option number 1. And initially, it was thought to have passed, and then it was ruled to have failed.
And that's why the meeting minutes reflect that the motion failed. That's why there's the redlining there. Because there was confusion as to whether it passed or failed.
So that means that we can get minutes, I mean, we can get AR reports unredacted?
No, that means there was no action taken.
Jean, can you explain this? I don't remember.
There was no action taken. The motion failed. There was a motion for one set of direction to be given, and that motion failed. And so that, when I saw the minutes for this meeting, it showed the motion passed, and so I asked the general manager to pull it so we could correct this to indicate that that motion failed.
And what was the net result of the fact that the motion failed?
There's no direction that's been given.
Call the question.
Okay, is that clear? Just
No,
so,
I'm totally confused.
So basically, these minutes reflect a correction. That's basically what you're looking at with the redlining. Because originally it said it passed, but it did not. It failed. That's why it says failed. And that's what we're approving is the correction that it failed.
Okay. I remember I had other changes on these minutes, which the board didn't agree to. Isn't that correct? From the last meeting. So that's why those corrections weren't made. The board didn't want to make them. Plus, we did not include whether members of the public supported or opposed items. So for that reason, I'm going to vote no to approve the minutes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, one.
Opposed.
One opposed. Motion carries. The minutes are passed. Public hearing now. Item number 7. This is public hearing for the first draft preliminary operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2014-15. I have one public comment on this from, I'm sorry, Bob? Is it? I'm sorry, can you please come up here and tell us your...
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yes.
I think it's appropriate to have the announcement that notice has been given first.
Right, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I got this out of order. If you just hold on one sec. So I declare this hearing open, and has notice been given, Mr. Grinnell?
It has,
Okay,
Mr. President.
thank you. So before we get to the staff report, why don't we do the public comment first?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Bud Ratz. I live in Half Moon Bay, and as a matter of background, I'm formerly an assistant controller at Stanford, and I was director of management and financial planning for the university. So I am familiar with budgets. I reviewed the package that was included, and also went back and looked at some previous year's packets, and I appreciate all of the effort that the staff put in gathering a set of numbers. But unfortunately to me, and I think to the general public, this is symphony played in a vacuum. I would expect a budget to start with a discussion of the forces affected in the organization to which it's portraying. I would expect a discussion of the gathering of resources, and then a discussion of the deployment of those resources. I realize that this is early in the stage of the process, but I would hope that by the end of this process, that we had a 4 or 5 page summary discussing these forces in preceding any statements or budget set of numbers. And that should be authored either by the general manager or by the president of the commission. This discussion, for example, if you look at the budget the way it's presented now and the way it was presented last year, this is just a set of dry numbers. There's no, you look at the revenues, and they're just dry numbers. There are some comments in some of the notes, but not really. They do not discuss the fees. Are fees being increased, decreased? Do we expect changes in the volume of fees? For example, another example is taxes. You look at the tax revenue from 2013, it was $5 million. The estimated taxes for the current year are 4. And next year there's 4.1. Why is that? We're in a recovering economy. Did the tax rate changes? If so, actually, if it's consistent across the board without any other factors changing it, the number should be increasing. Look at benefits and the costs, the summary on page 18. You look at the raw numbers, $800,000 to 1.7, a doubling. Why is that? Oh, I look at a note, and it's scheduled, buried way down in the numbers. In 2013, there was a recovery of $253,000 for Oyster Point for something in the termination line. So it's not clear, and the budget should reflect what is happening to the district. Another major area of concern are capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are included in the operating part of the budget. There are carryover funds included in another line. There should be an annual allocation from the operating budget, the annual revenues that the commission receives, over to a separate capital budget. And that capital budget should list all projects which have been approved by the commission, their sources of funding, expenditures to date, and an anticipated final cost, and if there's a negative variance, where those funds are going to be procured. As to the schedules, the general schedules going through the budget, 2 columns should be added which would dramatically improve the information value of those schedules. An estimated variance for the current year versus the estimated budget versus actual. And then there should be a column for the percent increase in the proposed budget over the previous year's budget. Also, P&L should be provided for each separate harbor operation. They operate at a loss, we know that. But we allocate tax revenues and our flexible resources to those 2 operations. And that's a very important decision. Which one do we support and why are we supporting and what's happening in those harbor operations? Now, all of that is a mystery.
Thank you. And Mr. Ratz,
I know that you have a planning workshop on the 16th. Question, is that open to the public?
Yes, it has to be.
Great. And I would hope that we can dramatically improve the budget presentation this current year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Okay, now that we have public comment, we have staff report. Mr. Grinnell, I assume that's going to be you?
You have the first draft preliminary budget before you. I don't know how much time you want to spend on it now. Your past practice has been to basically accept the budget as a first preliminary draft, accept public comments, and if there are any questions, we can attempt to respond to them at this time, or otherwise bring back answers at the next board meeting on the 16th, and onward through the process as the case may be. Indeed, there are notes after the several sections that refer to certain items by way of explanation, or at least partial explanation. Again, there's a budget summary on page 3 that I direct your attention to. There are 4 summary points there for openers. Again, in response to earlier request, we have a couple of visual descriptions of funds. We did not do that last year. We're trying that this year. These are a first attempt at that. We may have others as well. We may modify these as a way of trying to make the budget more readable. The gentleman's comment was very interesting. He basically calls for a several-page written summary of what's going on with that. We will definitely take that under consideration. Obviously, you could write a phone book. That is not his intention, nor would it be ours. But to take it seriously, the idea, of course, would be to try to make this as understandable to the public as possible. And so we will work on trying to make sense of that. In the end, however, yeah, there's a lot of numbers in here. That's what budgets are, and that's what the agencies who require these call for. So we need to do at least this to the extent that we can add any information that explains better what's in them. We will try to do that. So at this point, I'll just stop, and if you have any questions now, I'll try to answer them or keep them for the workshop.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions?
None at this time.
Okay.
Mr. President, just for purposes of discussion, again, I would move that we continue the public hearing to the next regular meeting.
Okay, there is a motion, so is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion second. Let's continue with questions on the motion.
I have none.
Okay. Questions on the motion?
I have questions about the budget.
Why don't we just go ahead and take it? Commissioner Brennan, and then I have one.
Okay. I do think that the Harbor District could do a better job of presenting the information in a way that makes it more digestible and easier for the public as well as the board to understand. There's a movement happening with public agencies to make budgets as transparent and open as possible. And our budget is not there. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'd really encourage the staff to do whatever they can to look at how other public agencies that are, maybe ahead of the curve on that are doing things. I'm not sure, President Bernardo, how you guys do it at the Port of Oakland, but I imagine you've got a lot of people scrutinizing your budget there. And I do find this budget hard to follow. I've got a few questions that I'll try to just go over quickly. So on page 2 of 44, we've got the budgets. We've got a budget summary. And one question I have is on the total capital project expenses, it says including carryovers. If carryover expenses are shown, where are carryover funds? So that's just a question. And the mixing of capital projects in the operating budget is very confusing. And for both the operating budget and the capital budget, only current transfer for capital projects should show here. Expenditures, prior year's funds, carryover should show in a separate capital budget. And on page 5 of 44, this is a budget summary page. The summary should be printed in a way that shows more context. It should have columns, which, and that should apply to pages 6, 7, and 8 as well. In the summary, columns would be helpful, something like, columns for each fiscal year and for the variances, so on and so forth. We kind of already heard a little bit about that. It's just not presented well here. And then on page 10 of 44, which is combined revenues, these pages should also have this page and the subsequent pages should have columns added as well for variances and so on and so forth. So there just needs to be more columns, and it needs to be more clear what's going on here. On page 13 of 44, which is Oyster Point Marina Park revenues, what were the berth fees? We need an index to separate information, numbers, price increases, volume changes, that sort of thing. And page 15 of 44, why is, and this is administrative revenues, why is the amended budget so far below fiscal year 2012-2013 actual? Same for fiscal year 2013-2014 and fiscal year 2014-2015. Property revenues are increasing, and it would be great to have a really clear explanation on this. On page 18 of 44, which is combined expenses, kind of got too much to cover here. This report seems rather redundant. Budget, why the large increase in benefits? That's a question. Maybe more information about that. And the same comments apply for Pillar Point as well as for Oyster Point. And I can't see the page number on this one. I'm looking at Pillar Point Harbor expenses. It might be 19. I'll come back to this one at the next meeting. Anyway, I just think there's more we could do here to make this user-friendly and provide the information that's needed to really look at the budget. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions, comments on this? No. Okay. And I just have one final one. While I'm pleased that every year our external auditor approves all of our financials, there's always certainly room for improvement, and I do take the public comment tonight really to heart and seriously, because there is always improvement for budget presentations, because budgets are not everyone's bailiwick. I know that they're not mine, and I'm always really happy when there's a lot more narrative and more summarizing, because if I just look at numbers, I get lost in the numbers myself. So it's funny, Commissioner Brennan did mention where I work. At the Port of Oakland, we are in the middle of our budget cycle too, because we operate by fiscal year as well. And our chief financial officer, she gave a 20-minute presentation on our budget, and the way we do it, and I'm not saying that we should do it this way, but the way that made it easy for me to understand was that she started off with market forces. She talked about competitive landscape. She talked about sort of where we're at. It anchored the agency, and said, okay, this is what's swirling around us right now, before we even start talking about money. And then she brought into it, for example, labor, CalPERS, because at the Port of Oakland we're CalPERS agency, and she said, okay, look at this chart. This is where we were 10 years ago. This is where we are now. This is where we're projected. And you could really see the CalPERS expense go up, I think, 18% or something like that. And those are some things that you just can't control. Those are sort of uncontrollable costs. Capital priorities is another thing that's important, an important piece of the whole budget finance puzzle. Profit and loss, definitely. Where I work, we have 3 different businesses. It's not just one. We operate an airport, we have a seaport, and we have 20 miles of real estate. And each one of those has their own profit and loss. And how does that all come together? And if you have loss here, does it make up over here? And so, as you can see, the budget can be quite complex. And so, any way that we can, whatever we could do to simplify looking at these numbers is much appreciated. And I think that's just what I'm going to say with that. And this is in no way is a slam against our finance director. I want to make that very clear, okay? But there is always room for improvement in how we communicate numbers and budgets and finances. So that's all that I'm going to say with that. So that concludes the questions. There was a motion and a second. So to move this to the next meeting, as we always do. So can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We're going to move this, as we always do, to the next meeting, which will be at Oyster Point Marina. New business continued. We have item 8, bills and claims in the amount of $71,372.72. Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. President, members of the commission, I've reviewed the bills and claims and would move approval of $71,372.72. I would so move.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I hear a motion and a second. Any questions on bills and claims?
I have a couple questions.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
So I'm looking at the March 19th bills and claims, which we had to go through at record speed at the last meeting because the meeting was very behind schedule, and our agenda was incredibly packed, as it is tonight. So I'm comparing that to the bills and claims in item 8 tonight, and I'm noticing that for the 19th, we have LCW, which is our outside counsel, not the council that specializes in maritime law, but this is outside counsel that has been working on behalf of the board related to harassment complaints and also advising the board on commissioner benefits questions. And so that's Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore. So I see it on the 19th, we were billed for $18,284.30. And then on the bill tonight, we have a bill for $3,068.75. And is this the total of what they've billed us to date, or have there been other billings that I haven't noticed? That's a question for staff.
We'll have to check and get back to you on that.
Okay, and I'd like to answer that because I'm aware. There are more billings coming.
Okay, so this is it so far today?
So far.
Okay.
But there will be more billings
Okay,
coming.
and then the second question I had is on the bill tonight for the $3,068.75. Is that specifically for the review of commissioner benefits, or is that bill mixed in with harassment complaints billings?
I'll have to get back to you on that detail.
Okay. All right, and just my standard blanket statement, which is I'm not going to vote to approve bills and claims because the board voted not to allow me to look at bills and claims outside of the administrative office, which is what I requested. So for that reason, and only for that reason, I'm going to vote no on bills and claims.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. So roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker? Aye. President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion carries. And let's move to continued business. Now we are at item 9, Harbor Commissioner Benefits Information and Possible Action to Amend Commissioner Benefit Policies.
Yes, Mr. President, I request that this be put over till the 16th board meeting, our next meeting. There's an additional legal question about one of the items that I need to follow up on.
Okay.
So we will schedule that for next time if that's okay by the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we're at item number 10, moving right along. Auction items for Sustainable San Mateo County Award Ceremony. Mr. Grinnell.
Yes, this is carried over from last time. And again, this was something that Commissioner Paravano brought to the attention of the commission. So we're bringing it back to you for action. Again, the actual event is tomorrow. So I'm not sure quite what can happen with that. I wonder if Commissioner Paravano might shed some light on that. But anyway, we felt obliged to bring it back since it had not been taken up at the previous
Okay,
meeting.
thank you. Just related to this though, okay, I see the not to exceed $200. It doesn't say what the $200 is for. I guess that's my sort of big question. So do either of you want to?
The way that was considered previously was that it could either be in cash or some kind of comparable in-kind contribution, which was never specified.
Okay, so it's basically when you say cash, it's a sponsorship. It's basically a sponsorship. That's what that is. It's a sponsorship. It's like and sometimes it's a table sponsor, sometimes it's a commemorative program sponsor, and you get your logo in the program, that type of thing. I'm assuming that's what this is.
Isn't this for dinner? This is a dinner.
Oh, it's a dinner?
$200 for the dinner.
Okay. Would you? I'm sorry.
This item is for an auction item to be placed at the awards dinner, which is tomorrow night, by Sustainable San Mateo County. And I believe our last discussion that we had, that it was either up to $200 or an in-kind contribution. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we had, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that we had mentioned as an option 2 tickets for a charter boat for deep sea fishing.
It was a possibility.
Through one of the charter boat operators at the harbor. correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was what it was earmarked for.
Okay.
It was an auction item.
And what we're just, and the reason why I'm asking is just for transparency purposes, so we're all clear on what we're voting for. Is it's $200 worth of a charter
Tickets, yes.
Tickets.
Tickets toward a deep sea fishing experience.
For an auction? Is it an auction?
For an auction.
Okay, but here's what I'm confused by. Can I ask this question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
My understanding is that this is a dinner that's being held. Who is attending the dinner, and are they attending the dinner for free because we're contributing $200 towards charter boat? What I heard is that Commissioner Paravano is going to be going to the dinner to present this, and that is not something that we've talked about. Is that, am I
Boy,
understanding?
you are so far.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Commissioner Paravano, would you like to just kind of
It
explain?
was never mentioned, it was mentioned this is an auction item only, and that is it.
Okay.
So you're not attending the dinner?
I am attending the dinner.
Okay, but for clarification, Commissioner Paravano is not attending the dinner on Harbor District funds.
Right.
Thank you.
How much does it cost to attend the dinner?
If you would like to go, the tickets are available and you can purchase the item. This is strictly for an auction item discussion, and that is it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could we give them the boat that's on Capistrano on Highway 1? Tongue in cheek, I think the tickets are contribution for the commercial fishing adventure, or the sport fishing adventure, perfect.
Okay. So we're clear, just so we're all clear, because before we vote, we have to be clear what we're giving. So $200 worth of fishing excursion.
How will it be decided who benefits from that? Which charter boat is going to be selected as the charter boat that provides the trip? I mean, how do we decide? We have a bunch of charter boat operators. I just want to make sure that this is a little complicated.
Understood. We're just trying to be clear.
That everything's up front. So who is going to provide the charter boat?
The decision is made by the winner of the auction item.
They get a selection of charter boats?
Yes.
And how is that presented to them? Like you give them a list of names? And
It's probably on the certificate, I
It's
assume.
it's on the website. They can choose wherever they want to go with.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say I won, if I were there, I'm not going, but if I were there and I won this thing, I would get sort of a voucher, I assume, and then there's a menu of who I could choose as my charter boat operator.
And then the district pays, and then we pay that charter boat that they selected.
That's my assumption.
That's
Is that
how it
correct?
works.
Just so we're all on the same page on what we're voting for.
Is that how it works? This is a question for the general manager.
I would assume so. Basically, it would be up to the person who won the item, and it would be totally up to them as to which boat they would choose, and they can go just like anybody else and book a ticket, book a seat or seats up to that value, and then the cost of that would be paid by this contribution.
And is the staff providing a formal, I don't know, some sort of a certificate that they get as their award that explains what their choices are, or how is this provided to them?
I'm not sure about that. We're not providing any certificates.
Okay. I just don't understand how they know what they're getting. That's unclear to me. How does that?
It'll probably, I'm assuming, and this is really getting into the weeds, but I'm assuming it'll be in when you receive your gift, it will all be explained in there,
By
along
who?
with a voucher.
But by who? Who explains it?
Staff would be doing this, I would assume.
Is staff doing this?
Well, if we stay up tonight, we might be able to do it.
All right, okay.
Point of information, please.
Yes.
Have we already approved this? I thought we already approved it, so we haven't approved it, we just put it on the agenda.
No, it was to put it on the agenda
Okay,
because we
all right.
couldn't vote on it that night because it was
Okay.
just raised that night.
Well,
so.
I would make a motion to approve providing the auction item consisting of either $200 or an in-kind contribution to the Sustainable San Mateo County Awards Ceremony auction.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second on that motion?
I would like it to specifically go towards something that benefits the Harbor District, meaning that it's not just cash that they get from us, that the money has to go towards the charter boat. I think that's important, that it be used towards benefiting at one of our businesses, which also benefits the Harbor District. I don't want to give people cash, $200 cash. Does that make sense?
The motion was not to give a participant in the dinner $200 in cash. It was to provide an auction item consisting of $200 or comparable in-kind contribution. Commissioner Paravano, was it your recommendation that it be for a gift certificate for sport fishing?
I think that in our initial discussion, when this was going to be put on the agenda, that's what we had talked about, but it's certainly open for other suggestions too.
All right, but is that your suggestion?
Yes, I think that would be something that would raise a...
Then I'd accept the proposed amendment by Commissioner Brennan as a friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. So
We need a second, though.
So yes, we need a second on that.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Since this involves money, $200, let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along, item number 11. I have a speaker card. Actually, Mr. Warren, I had you for item number 9, but we decided to push item number 9 till the next meeting. So did you still want to talk about item number 9? Because we're at item 11 now.
9 is not on the agenda.
Nine's gone.
That's right, sorry, 9's gone. But number 11, please, which is the Facilitator Services for Harbor Commission, possible candidate interview and consideration, and possible action to select a facilitator to work with the Harbor Commission on commission functioning and communications.
Mr. President, members of the commission, we reviewed 2 candidates and interviewed 2 candidates. There was a third candidate, Mr. Brent Ives, which came to our meeting up in South San Francisco, and because of the lateness of the hour, we were not able to get to him. Several of us saw him after the meeting and suggested that he send a CV, curriculum vitae, so we could have a little more information about him. I do understand that Commissioner Brennan at least has had communication with him, and for purposes of discussion, I would like to hear from Commissioner Brennan what her thoughts are.
Okay, before we hear from Commissioner Brennan, we had Mr. Warren on item 11 on this item. Would you like to speak on this item? And then we'll get to Commissioner Brennan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I haven't necessarily followed this subject closely enough, but there seems to be, no surprise, disagreement on who to hire. And I think that for something like this, this particular issue, you really need to hire somebody that you have universal buy-in. If any commissioner objects to the person you hired, the process is doomed to failure before it starts. And of course, if you just wait until after the next election, the problem will go away because 2 or 3 of you will be gone.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Brennan.
Well, I know that at our last meeting, we were not able to hear from Brent Ives, which was unfortunate since he traveled so far to get to us. And I understand that he communicated with the general manager regarding providing this, what is essentially like a resume here, and its detail. He also communicated that unfortunately he couldn't make it to the meeting tonight because he had a prior engagement. He has communicated that if the board wanted to meet with him, that he, would be willing to come back, as long as it can fit within his schedule. Keep in mind, he has, He has been here once before. We just weren't able to talk to him. My experience with Brent Ives is minimal, but he was a trainer that facilitated a training by the California Special Districts Association, so he was working for them as a consultant. When I went to have my special district training, which this board approved, there's required ethics training, and the board approved some additional training at one point. You recall that? You look surprised. Okay.
No, I'm listening.
Okay. And Brent Ives happened to be the trainer in one of my trainings. I thought that he did an excellent job. There was a very diverse mix of people in the group, and we were located near Salinas. So we had people from local water boards and various places. There was a real spectrum of different types of council members and board members in the meeting, and they all brought their issues, their concerns from their special districts to the training. And what I observed was that Brent was very professional and very experienced in the types of information that he was able to share with the people in the training. And he clearly had a wealth of experience about special districts, which I thought was particularly useful. And he came highly recommended by that organization. He's not an employee of the California Special Districts Association, but he does do consulting for them. I also met some people during that training that had hired him for their district in the past to do this sort of facilitation, and they highly recommended him. And they were a couple of people who were on the same board who don't generally agree with one another, but they both agreed that he was a great facilitator. So I thought that spoke volumes in his ability to work with different types of people with different backgrounds. And clearly that would be important for this board, that we work with somebody who's able to work well with the diversity on the board. And so that, I was surprised that he made it onto the general manager's short list. I had no reason to think that he would, but when I saw his name, I recognized it, and I thought, wow, here's somebody who is really, really good, and this is exciting. So that's why I was disappointed when we didn't interview him initially. So I'm glad that he's being considered, and if the board has, he's very accessible, so if the board had questions for him, you can call him, you could email him. He also has a terrific website which has video tutorial trainings on it. It's extremely professional. We're just talking about somebody who is probably one of the best trainers and facilitators in California. So, and we're talking about somebody who's really high caliber, and he happens to live not too close, but close enough that he could actually potentially do this. So I think it's exciting, and I was pleased to read the Daily Journal article, because I didn't have a conversation with Brent after the meeting like some of the other commissioners did, and I was pleased to see that Commissioner Tucker seemed to have a favorable experience in his brief meeting with Brent. So that's kind of, if you have other questions for me, let me know.
Thank you. So, okay, commissioners, what would you like to do with this item?
Mr. President, I think we kicked this around a little bit, and it's sorry that the way it came down with Mr. Ives, that we didn't have a chance to formally vent him, if you will, vet him. But in the interest of time and a working relationship that we would hope to put together, I would move that we retain Brent Ives as our facilitator.
I'll second.
I hear a motion and a second. Any other questions
I have a comment.
Sure. Commissioner Holzinger.
I found all three of them to be quite suitable, quite qualified, and well presented. I wouldn't have a problem with working with any of them, since there seems to be consensus with at least two commissioners, including Commissioner Brennan, who felt that this process was more important than anyone else. I'm certainly happy to accede to Mr. Ives' selection.
Okay, any other? And I would just like to finally, I agree with Commissioner Holzinger. I mean, any of these three candidates, I think would be perfect. So and since I'm hearing really, great things from Commissioners Tucker and Brennan, I'm for it too. So I will be supporting this. So the motion is to then retain, thank you, retain the services of Mr. Ives. So since this will involve money, and I'm looking at his CV, and it's in the amount of, his hourly rate was, I want to say it's $250 an hour. Yeah, $250 an hour. Since it involves money, let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holzinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Faribault?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. Moving right along. Item 12, post office lot. I have two public comment cards here. So why don't we first do the memo? I'm going to have Mr. Grinnell kind of lay this out and explain what this is about, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Haggerty and Mr. Warren. So, Mr. Grinnell?
Yes. By way of background and explanation, which I think is necessary to bring everyone up to date on this, the post office lot represents a second property owned by the Harbor District that has been deemed surplus and in past years, and then been considered for disposition as something that was not needed any further by the Harbor District. The first such property was what was called the Median Strip or the Burnham Strip, which was in fact sold to the Granada Sanitary District just a few years ago. It went through the same process that staff foresees perhaps going through with the post office lot. And what's important for the public to know and for the board to be refreshed on is that there are a couple of statutory requirements before in this case, this Harbor District can dispose of this property. Number one is that you have to declare it surplus, and you will notice on the agenda for tonight's meeting, the item says, adopt resolution 6-14 to declare land owned by the San Mateo Harbor District designated assessed parcel number known as the post office lot, and direct the general manager to send written offers to sell or lease said property in compliance with and is designated by, that should read Government Code Section 54222. Those are two statutory requirements. And in fact, in your packets, you have Section 5422, the particular section that refers to the letters. We have included, in fact, a resolution that I discovered after this agenda was printed, that in fact the Harbor Commission via resolution 19-75 declared this property surplus back in 1975, and now I've conferred very recently with council, and we've agreed that in fact, just to make sure there is no question of statutes of limitations or whatever, that in fact you should reinforce the thing by, in fact, adopting Resolution 614 as indicated in tonight's agenda. I had left that off the staff memo, having come upon the old 1975 resolution, but in further consultation with council, we've decided that it would be wise and would not cause any issue to adopt this resolution as well, 614. With that, then, we would send the statutorily required letters to the several agencies specified in 54222. And let's see, where is that again? For the benefit of the public, those are Park or Recreation Department within the county, a regional park authority. In this case, that would be the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, the State Resources Agency, and the Cabrillo School Unified School District would receive these letters. That process was gone through, as I said, with the median strip earlier. Now, there is one additional thing to be said about this. We have also had a communication with the Coastside Fire Protection District, which has expressed interest in the property. In my most recent conversations with the fire chief, I was told, firstly, that the fire district is planning on building 2 new firehouses and is looking at several different sites. In my latest conversation with him, which followed the previous board meeting, where I indicated that as a matter of at least courtesy, I should get back to him. I did, and he said, oh yes, we do want to meet with you and discuss whether or not this parcel might suit our needs. Now, the Fire Protection District is not indicated as an agency to whom we must send a letter. On the other hand, we are not precluded from talking with the fire district. On the other hand, what the law does state, 54222, is first, we must send these letters, wait for the statutory 60-day period to receive replies from any or all of those agencies, and if any of them do indicate a potential interest, we would be obliged to first talk with that agency or those agencies. We are not required to do a deal with them, but we must first talk with them, and we would have to do that if that happened before we could do anything further with the Fire Protection District. So that's the state of affairs, and so at this point, given that the property in fact has already a long time ago been declared surplus, you now have an opportunity to reinforce that and direct staff to take the next step to try to move to dispose of the property.
Thank you. I appreciate that summary. You know, just for the benefit of the public and for my benefit, because this goes back to 1975. And I was like, wow.
Yes.
So let's get with the public comment and then let's have commissioner questions. So we have Mr. Haggerty and Mr. Warren.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and Honorable Commissioners. I would like to talk about the post office lot. For a number of years, I've been keenly aware of the uniqueness of this property. I often go there out in front of the property, the whole area, you know, it's the end of the block of what is a town center. One of the most unique towns in the United States. There's nothing really that I know of. I could be wrong, but I cherish this town. You know, it's a small town, seaside, next to the metropolis of San Francisco, San Jose. So it's a very unique place for not just me, a community member, to use, but for people that come and visit. It's a very very unique piece of property. It's currently community owned. The Harbor District is a community entity, so it's owned by the community of San Mateo County. Over the years, knowing how special this piece of property is, by the way, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Dan Haggerty. I'm a member of the Mid-Coast Community Council, but I'm speaking for myself right now. So over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about this area and what could possibly be best for the community in that. And I don't know right now really what it could be. Some type of community serving purpose is what I feel most of them community members think would be best. So everyone in town comes to this place and enjoys the pristine views. There's a particular unique need for parking. This is another reason why this is a sensitive area, because I have been in the town center there and have seen essentially like 10 to 15 cars pull up all at the same time to get their mail. They just go in for a minute and they come out and then they go on home. So there's a great need for parking for that, serving that post office. Oftentimes people meet each other from town and they catch up with each other right there, walking their dogs on the way to the park. The ocean. The brewery is there now, which is starting taking up more parking in the area. There's other developments being talked about in the area. So this is an extremely sensitive piece of property, and the unique midpoint between the ocean and the town. So I'm pleading that you reconsider. Do not declare this surplus property. Give the community a chance to come. I just learned about this today. Most of the people in the community don't even know that the Harbor District owns this property. And I think that the community will really be upset to no end if the wrong plan takes seed and then later I just find a lot of problems that could potentially come up through rushing into this deal. Please allow the community to come together and have a discussion about what could potentially somehow with a regional or in some way or another see that it moves towards a community serving purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Warren.
Evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. Leonard Warren, El Granada. I usually forget to do that.
Can't hear you.
I don't know what to do. If you're going to keep meeting in this room, you really need to get amplification for the audience. I agree with more or less everything that Dan said. There's things going on behind the scenes that it would not be appropriate for me to talk about right now. And what I would really very strongly urge you to do is to delay this until like the end of the year to see what gels in other areas, because this really is a very important property for the community. And as you know, when you tried to lease it out to a local developer, his plans went down in flames. The community opposition was nearly universal. And the fire district has assured me that they won't try and build a fire station any place without vetting it with the community, and they have assured me that I will be on the committee to do that. I have not heard from them. but there isn't going to be a fire station there in our lifetimes, okay? I guarantee you that there will not be a fire station there. The fire board got upset when I said something like that regarding another property. They'll hear it about this one too. One of the things you need to know, the Harbor District did not pay a nickel for any of the El Granada properties they owned and currently own. Not a nickel. It was all donated to the Harbor District after World War II, when 2 farmers died and their widows looked around for a government agency, and the only government agency they could find was the Harbor District. That was literally the only one that existed, other than the county, and the county probably refused to accept it because the county does not like to accept land. So I really, really would like you to delay this until roughly the end of the year. Notice I'm not arguing against it, just asking for more time so that the things that are in process can work their way forward. At that point, we'll know one way or another, and you could very well have broad community support for doing this. But right now, you wouldn't have that, and this is a district that is sorely in need of working with the community and getting community support for the things that you do. One other thing that I forgot. Also know that where the current fire station is, most of you probably know that was owned by the Harbor District. The pump station next door to the fire station was part of the same parcel with the fire station, but it was split off to build the pump station. Yeah, I guess that's it. I'm not going to remember the one thing I forgot. So please just table this for 6 to 9 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have the report. We have the public comments. Commissioner questions.
I have comments when it's my turn.
Okay, why don't we start over here? Commissioner Holsinger?
None, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Tucker? Okay. Commissioner Caravano? Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
So I live on the coast side and in Moss Beach, not in El Granada. And I know that we have one other commissioner who also lives on the coast side in Half Moon Bay. And we have a Measure G, which is going to be on the ballot in November. And that measure, if it passes, will create a new parks district in El Granada. If Measure G passes, which I know the community strongly hopes that it will, there would be a stream of revenue potentially available to develop a community center at a site such as this. And I know I've heard from people who live in El Granada that they really like the idea of having a community center in this location because of the fact that this is the center of town. This is the main drag in El Granada. This is where the post office is. This is where the hardware store is. This is where the new Hop Dogma brewery is. This is right around the corner from the building that the district has been considering purchasing. And the possibility of having a community center in that location is very exciting to the community. It would be really unfortunate if that couldn't happen because the district sold the property and it fell into hands that weren't public, meaning it was, no public agency wanted it at the right time, and then it sat around longer and wasn't available for development in this capacity. So who knows what might happen? I mean, I know this is, it's hard to say because it's a ballot measure and we don't know what the will of the voters is going to be yet. But I think there is great possibilities for the site. And because it was a gift to the district, and when the gift was made to the district, it was intended for community benefit. I think it's important that the board keep that in mind and also consider that the public isn't aware of the fact that because it hasn't been widely noticed. There hasn't been any newspaper article or anything like that to let the public know that the board is considering selling off this asset. So for that reason, I would like to table this until later on. Another reason I'd like to table it is because we have a lot going on right now. We have 21 items on this agenda. We are considering potentially buying a new building and relocating our administrative office, which is going to create total upheaval for the staff, not to mention all the moving and document retention and whatnot that's going to have to happen, and all the other projects. We've got the strategic plan, we've got facilitation, you know, it's just, there's a lot going on. And then of course there's capital improvement projects and repairs and all of that. So I don't think this is a good time to put this property on the market. I would prefer that we wait. And I also want to be good neighbors if we were potentially to relocate to El Granada. You know, I think it's important to remember who our neighbors are and who our potential tenants might be. And that's a consideration that I'm thinking about too. So for those reasons, I'm not opposed to potentially selling the property, but I think it needs to be done in a careful and well thought out way and give the community an opportunity to potentially do something really exciting at that location. And that just means waiting a little bit longer. And we've had it since 1975, so what's another, you know, year at this point? So that's what I'd propose.
Thank you. I have a question, Mr. Grinnell. I'm struggling with this item after hearing the public comment. What is the urgency? Is there an urgency here?
Yes, there is. Right now, you've got a non-performing asset that's sitting there. Selling it would generate some very useful cash to the Harbor District's fund that would help defray costs of all manner of projects, as has been mentioned. So if indeed the board feels, as I do, that a top priority for the district is augmenting its revenue sources, this is a great opportunity to do that at minimal cost. Now, to take into account a couple of the comments made, the idea of a community center sounds like a good idea. It certainly sounds like something that this community might really want and enjoy. The steps you're being asked here tonight to take do not preclude any of that kind of consideration, communication, and activity. The fact is, as Commissioner Brennan's just indicated, you know, she's not necessarily opposed to selling it at some point. Well, the point is, the district by law cannot dispose of this property unless it takes those two steps of declaring it surplus, which it did once before. We want to just reaffirm that, and then send those required letters to those particular agencies. Again, we are not required to deal with any of those agencies. Again, there is a 60-day period to enable those agencies to respond. The district, again, cannot take any action before that time.
Okay, so...
And finally, if I may, because it's a 2¼ acre parcel, given the location that the fire district previously has indicated to us where they would prefer to put a new fire station, there's a whole other half of the property that could be available for a community center.
Okay.
So again, tonight, this is a necessary step, regardless of whatever happens, whatever communications have. It doesn't preclude anything. It doesn't prevent any of this from happening.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So my follow-up question is this. Okay, you answered the first part of my question. So that prompts the second part of the question. So what we're being asked really is, okay, if we adopt this, it doesn't mean we're immediately selling it, correct? I mean, that's what you just said. so that there's time if we wanted, if Measure G, El Granada Park District were to pass, we could, by passing this, still engage in that.
Correct.
Okay.
I
Okay,
don't
that's,
think that's the case, because I think if we do this, the general manager's whole intention is to try to push through the sale of the property as fast as possible. That's what we were communicated earlier, and the intention that I believe was explained was that the general manager has communicated with Chief Cole, and the two
Okay.
of them have cooked up some sort of a potential deal. However, if you talk to the fire district board, that you hear a different story. So I'm just saying, I would
Right.
prefer to table this and wait until we know what, if Measure G fails, well then, that's a clear sign that that's not going to happen.
Understood.
But if it passes, there is a customer potentially and a really awesome opportunity for the community, and if we push something through fast, we will, who knows what will happen, you know?
understood. So I have a follow-up question then based on this, and this is my last question. So if we were to pass this, whoever, whether it's Fire Protection District, whether it's some big developer from New York, whatever, wants to put a high-rise there, ultimately, we'll still come back here, right? I mean, whatever it is, it'll come back here, and we can vote it up or vote it down.
Absolutely correct.
So it's not like, okay,
Yeah.
just,
And let's be clear, as staff, it's our responsibility to look after district finances, and this is one opportunity. Again, it's up to you, the Harbor Commission, to decide what to do. We make recommendations, you can accept them or not. That's fine.
Okay.
We do our job, you do yours.
Okay.
But the key thing is that you are not preventing any of the things that have been mentioned tonight, any of the reasons for waiting. None of that is precluded by the actions you take tonight. The actions you take tonight are going to be necessary anyway, and you might as well set yourself up for that now. Yes, I have indicated that it is staff's concern about trying to dispose of it, but again, it's up to you, and there's time if you wanted to have some kind of community communication, you can do that by all means. You direct and we follow.
okay, thank you. Thank you. That concludes my questions. So, is there a motion?
I move that we table this until a later, put it off for 6 months, until after we are, moving forward with a strategic plan. We have some clarity about moving into potentially a new location for our admin staff and management, and pick it up again in 6 months.
Okay, so the motion is to table this for 6 months and then bring this up again 6 months from now. That's the
Yes.
motion. Do I hear a second? Okay, I don't hear a second. Procedurally, I'm going to make the second. So there's a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
No.
Commissioner Carabano?
No.
Commissioner Tucker? No. President Bernardo?
Aye. So motion fails, so,
President, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 6-14 to declare the land owned by the San Mateo County Harbor District designated as census parcel number 047261030 and known as the post office lot located in El Granada as surplus, and direct the general manager to send written offers to sell or lease said property in compliance with and as designated by Code Section 54222.
okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I hear a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye, motion carries. So we are now at item 13, update on Pillar Point Harbor
Mr.
Sidewalk.
President, may I suggest a 5-minute break?
Okay, I see they have to change the tape. Okay, let's have a 5-minute break, please, and let's meet back here at 8:17. Thank you. Okay, we are now back. We're in item 13 now. And item 13 is update on Pillar Point Harbor sidewalk improvements at the concessionaire's building, and we have public comment. But before we do that, let's go in order. Let's have the report where, Mr. Grinnell, if you could please kind of outline what this is about, and then we'll get to public comment, and then commissioners' questions.
Yes, Mr. President, I'll do that. This is back on the agenda at the urging of the commission in a previous meeting. I can't quite remember when, but it was recently. And so we brought it back for your consideration and tried to provide a little bit of history and an update on what the state of affairs is right now. And then we've closed with some next steps. Now, for the benefit of the public, I think it's important because there's different aspects of public interest to this whole thing. First, very quickly, the proposal, which is several years old, is to widen the sidewalk in front of the shops and restaurants at Pillar Point Harbor in that building to provide more space for the businesses to function on a regularized basis. Each of them would have an area in front of their business, and then the extension would allow for continued required free public access across and along that sidewalk. Doing this would require eliminating the row of diagonal parking right in front of the business establishments. So that's the basic concept behind this. The Harbor Commission did consider this just a few years ago and was favorably inclined toward it. At the time, there were some engineering estimates, and the Commission at the time budgeted $115,000 for the project, in any case, for various reasons, it did not proceed. One other factoid, at the time that the Harbor Commission was considering this, it was understood that if the cost of doing this exceeded the estimated $115,000, it would then come back to the Harbor Commission for consideration. In effect, tonight's consideration represents at least one example of that. If you adjust the $115,000 figure for 4 years of inflationary increases, the current estimate would be about $126,000 and change, but it's probably even more than that. In any case, just for current status, many of you are in the harbor or have come to the harbor either often or occasionally, and you'll notice that there are some tables and chairs that are on the public sidewalk in front of Princeton Seafood and Catch Joanne Restaurant that are informally there. There is also currently sewer line repairs underway by the Harbor District with a contractor to do the necessary fix-up of this old sewer line that serves those businesses. The project is contracted at $163,000, and we expect that to be finished before the end of the fiscal year, if not rather sooner. Again, most recently, Catch Joanne Restaurant and Harbor Bar has taken over the lease of the former Princeton Pantry adjacent to it, and those premises are between the Harbor Bar and Princeton Seafood, and they will be opening a small cafe there. Also, as you are aware, there is a monthly classic car show held in the parking area in front of the building. Also, in 2007, the district obtained what the county calls a certificate of exemption or exclusion for a coastal development permit for the sidewalk project. Now, this exemption has expired and would need to be reissued. In other words, we do need a county approval for this thing. The report refers to a series of capital projects that are either underway or budgeted, which call for several $100,000 of district funds. They total about $1.3 million in all. And the budget currently includes $200,000 for the sidewalk project. In other words, we stuck that in to make sure that there was something in there to assist in terms of your deliberation as you consider the budget for 14-15. And of course, the $200,000 assumes 100% district subsidy of the project. So now getting to the end of this, next steps, and basically the staff recommendation is that we ask you to consider all of these steps before taking a final decision to proceed with the project, which again in concept is something that has been viewed in the past with favor by the district. Those next steps refer to a budget, and as you get into your budget deliberations, starting with the workshop on the 16th, you should keep this project in mind along with the other ones. Also, you might want to consider the question of whether or not the project should be a cost share between the district and the lessees, which would provide for some fiscal relief to the district. At the same time, the primary beneficiaries would be participating in the project. Also, the question of paid parking has come up from time to time, and paid parking would be a way of helping to defray some of the cost. Now, I must mention, it's very important that past considerations of paid parking have always assumed appropriate exemptions and validations for harbor tenants, business workers, business patrons, for example, those patronizing the restaurants, and so on. But there's still plenty of visitors who would pay. And I should point out that Pillar Point Harbor is practically the only harbor on the whole region that doesn't have paid parking. Then there would need to be some minor lease amendments and ground rent adjustments because by adding space to each leasehold in front of them, they would be adding adding to their leased area from the district, and that would have to be taken into account.
Mr. Brunel, just one sec. Commissioner Tucker.
That's almost more information than we need. But why is it, and let me say this as politely as I can, why is it when I sense you're not supportive of a project, I can tell almost immediately by your report? Why is that? I don't think you like this project.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. I'm going to get a hearing test.
It's the acoustics in here.
Huh?
It's the acoustics.
Right.
Let me ask you, would the 17-foot widening of the sidewalk with concrete extend down to the surf shop at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would cover the entire length of the building.
Okay, you've really given us one very good overview.
Okay.
Well, I did that deliberately.
I know you did.
And really, I'm going to interject here. And the reason for it, and I'm going to be asking this more, is because of, again, the people at home and the people in the audience who have not read the report and don't have it in front of them.
Yeah.
I want it just to be easier for them to understand from hearing it.
Well, and that's why I went on at length for just that reason. And so just to finish, and so we should get an updated engineering estimate at least right now, so we know exactly what we might be expecting from bids to do this. And so then, given that, I would suggest that we come back to you as early as possible and for you to consider.
Okay, and just for clarification, Mr. Grinnell, what you're asking us, and I'm looking here, is quote-unquote revisit the project. That's what I'm hearing. I don't hear any specific numbers. I don't hear any specific, we want to do X, Y, and Z specifically. It's just revisit the project. That's correct?
Well, the project as it currently is understood has an adjusted estimated cost,
Right.
which is preliminary, of not less than $129,000. So there's a number for you. Again, as Commissioner Tucker raised, the project would cover the entire length of the existing sidewalk. It would include ADA compliant, ramps and so on. And it would also involve finding alternative parking area, which would be lost.
Okay.
Can I comment?
And that would be the project, basically.
Okay. Thank you. So, okay, that concludes the report. Thank you for the thorough background of the report. Let's get to public speakers. Mary Botham, and thank you so much for patiently waiting there, really. I mean, I know you've waited a very long time.
Well, actually, it wasn't as long as I expected because we got here at 7. I thought the meeting started at 7, so I apologize for being late. I'm Mary Botham. We've been tenants at Pillar Point Harbor for 33 years in our location with Princeton Seafood. And next month, I got a call from a kindergarten teacher, and she's bringing 60 kids one week and 60 kids the next week. And the reason I bring it up is these kindergartners, some of them, when they visit our restaurant, it's the first time they've ever seen the ocean. They live in Redwood City. Unbelievable, in my opinion. And part of what these sidewalks will do will allow additional space for families to come and sit and be able to view the boats and the harbor and everything that means in the community. But of course, you guys are looking at budgets tonight. And so today I put together some very simple figures on what the sidewalks could mean to our business and what they can mean to the Harbor District. Imagine each table makes $150. This is a very low estimate for what a table can do, a 2-seater table. And imagine that this outdoor table is available for 150 days. There's 365 days a year, but some days it rains. That right there is $22,000 at $22,500. I have a hard time with numbers, but you add those dollar signs, they're pretty exciting. And we could probably fit in 15 tables because we're talking about an area about as big as this square right here in front of our building. That equals $337,500 in additional revenue to Princeton Seafood. Now, every single dollar that we take in of restaurant revenue, 5 cents goes to the Harbor District. Or let's put that another way. Every $100, the harbor gets a $5 bill. Are you with me? So that translates into $16,875 a year. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a quarter of what we annually pay the harbor right now. Last year, we provided the harbor with revenues of $77,676, or 20% of page 8 of 47 on the operating for rents and concessions, which I'm not sure exactly what that includes. So we are talking about a 21% increase in what we would be paying you guys, which is substantial. And that amount of money at $200,000, you would pay for it, just our portion would be paid for in 2 to 3 years. It would be paid for very quickly. And I know it would take some time, and so I ask that you consider letting us go ahead with it this summer. Get it paid off now, before you even install the actual thing, we can do it with simple fencing. And the parking, we're talking, I think, 3 spaces. And in Lot B, behind our building, where we closed off that road, I believe we could set for 8 spaces. And we could easily restripe that, and that would care our parking spaces. We could get those people, we could get those families out in the harbor. They wouldn't just visit our restaurant. They would visit Mavericks, buy t-shirts, go surfing, they would buy fish off the boats. They would come back over and over and love our community.
And your numbers don't include Catch Joanne's numbers, which would be comparable.
Absolutely not, because I don't know their numbers. And these are very conservative. I believe these are very conservative numbers.
Thank you. So commissioners' questions. Commissioner Brennan, you had a question?
Just wanted to get a little clarification. Mary, are you suggesting that you could rope off the area before the sidewalk is put in so that you could go ahead and use the space before we actually implement the project? Is that what you're suggesting? Yes, but a lot nicer than roping. Yeah, well, I get it. Yes. I like that idea. In fact, you know, in San Francisco and other cities like San Jose, you see that happening with where whole streets have been closed to traffic and converted into outdoor cafe style seating and community areas. And so this is really exciting because, you know, since we just approved a new strategic planning process and we've got Nelson Nygaard on board along with Lisa Wise Consulting, and Nelson Nygaard, they're like experts on transit and parking lots and that, you know, that sort of connectivity. If we were to do something that was sort of like a temporary trial run, more or less, it would give them an opportunity to get on board and bring this into sort of the public planning process where we could really create something awesome. So that's kind of what I'm thinking and hearing about this. Anyway.
Question.
I'm sorry, did you finish your question though before we go? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tucker.
I would be in opposition to any kind of temporary, tentative roping off or chaining off, or even as nice as it could be. You get the curb there. You know, it's an automatic trip hazard. We set ourselves up for great liability. I'm in favor of the idea, going all the way down to the surf shop. But I'm in favor of doing it now and doing it the right way. And not in wood, as you and I once discussed, but in concrete, rebarred, the whole 9 yards. And I happen to know that there's some concern about fishes giving direction to where on the floor. I think I would not support things like that. But I'd love to see us, if this can get approval tonight, go ahead and go to the county and renew the approval that we got from them. We can find the parking places. I don't know that it's going to be behind your store, but the sewer will be in, that stuff will be done. We could put this together, I think, for $200,000, and now I'm told there's $200,000 in the tentative budget for that. I mean, so I'm saying, you know, let's go on and move ahead with this.
Any other questions, commissioners? Yes, if you want. Thank you.
I have one.
Go ahead.
In the report, it states that both the Princeton Seafood Company and the Catch have placed tables and chairs on the public sidewalk in front of their storefronts. And I was wondering if we could have an idea of how this has affected your business in terms.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention because
Yeah.
I was still shaking from speaking earlier.
No, sorry. Would you mind coming back to? I'm so sorry. I made you sit down, and the question is for you.
Thanks, Mary.
I'm sorry.
No. I was wondering if, in light of, there's already been a temporary expansion of tables and chairs in front of your businesses. How has this affected your business? I mean, without getting into actual financial data, is it something that has been a positive thing? Has it been a challenge for your staff? Has it been a challenge for the customers? Just kind of, what's your general feeling of that kind of an expansion?
It's so positive, I can't even tell you. I was very upset at first because our general manager moved Magnus Johnson, our statue. I don't know if you're familiar with our wooden statue. And he moved it because he was convinced that if we had a table there instead of our statue, that we would make all this money. And I was furious. And my husband can attest to this. And my husband is actually the one who took the receipts from that one table. And it was probably double what I indicated to you. And we do have a very small kitchen, and I was concerned about the kitchen being able to do it, but the general manager took out some of the products and he made more salads, and he was able to make it all work. And you know, we're not young anymore. I don't like to admit that, but Marty and I can't be there as much as we used to could. And so now we're paying for us and a general manager. And to be able to support 2 families, we're looking for every way possible to increase revenue. And so the outdoor tables is one of the ways we're doing that. And to keep increasing revenues, we have to do something different. And it's what you go to other places, and Miramar put in a beautiful deck. The brewery has a beautiful deck. People love sitting outside and enjoying the environment while they're eating.
Thanks, Mary. And thanks to you and Marty for showing up tonight. Thank you.
I have some questions and comments when you're
Okay, you might want to just stay there. Commissioner Holzinger.
I guess the question, some detail first. About how wide is the current sidewalk from your front door to where the curb is?
From probably here
10 feet?
to about here.
Well, that looks like about 15 feet.
No, it's 10 feet.
10 feet?
It's roughly,
He's much better
Okay,
at
and the space, the width that would be added?
17.
about a truck,
Okay,
because it's 17 feet.
all right.
total.
No, 17 in addition to your 10.
In addition to the 10, it says 27.
So what I'm just saying is that the way the cars are parked now in front of there at a diagonal, it looks like it's about another 10 feet depth, maybe even a little less because of the diagonal parking. So I'm just trying to get an idea of it here.
The original drawings that came up did not go to the end of the diagonal parking.
Okay.
So it wasn't an additional 17 feet out. That 17 feet was from the wall. One other consideration is that I don't believe all of the concessionaires, in the discussions that I've ever had with them, are thrilled to have the sidewalk pushed out. And it might be that just in some of the restaurants and or maybe one of the other concessionaires, so it may not be the entire from left to right.
Well, and part of my comment is what I noticed is that an application was made for approval of this to the county before and was approved. I wasn't there at the time, but I've heard no public comment, whether from other concessionaires or from the public, opposed to this. And we've had it on the agenda a couple of times now. And of course, it was approved before. So I've not heard any opposition to it, so that's notable to me. One of the things I was trying to figure out is whether or not there would be room to save a few spaces by doing parallel parking rather than at an angle parking along there. And it sounds like it may be possible, but may not likely. That's part of the issue perhaps for strategic planning that will be more long-term. The other question I had, because there's going to be strategic planning, and Mary, I mentioned this to you at the break, if strategic planning is going to be involved in this process on an overarching basis for the entire district, for capital improvements, for all issues as related to this, is there something in the interim we can do, or my question is, simply renewing the permit sounds like the shortest, simplest thing to do. We already have cost estimates, we already have the ability to go forward at a known price rather than trying to seek out some interim process while we're waiting for strategic planning. And it would, as you suggest, generate some very tangible revenues, and I appreciate those specific figures. It's very telling for me.
And just as background, when Dan Timko was the harbor master, we had at least 2 meetings with the other concessionaires present where we had drawings and conceptions on how it would look. So we've been involved in this process for a long, long, long time.
I guess my only other comment would be generally to the general manager and to my fellow commissioners. Indeed, we do have the strategic planning starting, and if we go and I'm in favor of reapplying for a renewal of the permit or reactivation of the permit, because that seems the quickest way to accomplish something positive and generate new revenues for the district. Just as you're looking for revenues for yourself, the district is looking at revenues for itself, and it sounds like there may be a win-win here. But it would seem reasonable to get the new consultants for the strategic planning at least on board to hear their comments on this as an interim step, and whether they might want to suggest some public hearing process, or whether they think it's good, or whether they have some suggestions about parking, or perhaps if some of the other concessionaires don't want the full widening in front of their store, but would rather have the existing parking. So it would be helpful to get those input while we are still going forward with reactivating the permit that we have. Do you have any comment to that? I mean, I'm looking at the district manager for that, and he's making notes, so I'm grateful. But do you have any comments about that?
Well, looking at the financials and just the part that we would generate for the harbor, almost $20,000 every year, I think it would be sad to delay too long. I agree with Mr. Tucker that we want to be very careful that we don't have any slip hazards or falling, but perhaps there's a way that we could move ahead as quickly as possible.
You can still meet those difficulties. Maybe it could be done before this summer.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to note, too, that when this first came up, I had reservations and concerns. I think it was a year ago, maybe longer, 2 years ago. And I've looked around and done my own due diligence and research and checked out other facilities. And I'm a firm supporter of expanding the sidewalk. It's just a question of how we can do it and how soon we can do it. Thank you.
A question for Scott when it's my turn.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan, you
I
might
have one
want...
more comment, if I may.
Please.
I think that things got dropped for two main reasons. Number one, we had the turnover in the staff with Dan Temko and I can't remember the guy in between, and then Scott. So there was that. And then the economy. I mean, I didn't know how I would be able to buy the tables because everything was very difficult. But the economy is turning around, and I think now is the time to act.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brennan had a question for Mr. Grindy.
So if we were to embark on a construction project, which would obviously block access to some extent to these businesses temporarily, and since you've already been involved in the sewer pipe project, and of course that had impacts on businesses as well, what would be the time frame when this sort of project would best be done? Just any time before summer?
I think that my first comment would be is to get all the tenants in the same room, lock the door, and ask that question. Because what it comes down to is that everybody's got a different business window. I have a bar restaurant next door that's working till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and then cleaning through the night. And I'm looking at, a shop that sells surfboards and equipment, and a bait shop that opens very early in the morning. So one of the first thoughts that came to my mind on this project after doing the sewer line project, scoping and staging, is to almost do sections at a time. The bad part of doing sections at a time is that there's going to be increased cost because the contractor is going to have to do sections at a time. And when they're bringing in a cement truck, the volume of cement may not be that tight. And it's also when we do the work. Majority of this work would have to be daytime. Most cement trucks aren't working at night, especially on the peninsula, on the coast. It's harder to get contractors out there, as we've seen, for bidding and such, so it's even more difficult there. So right off the top of my head with your question, I think it can be done quickly. It's more of how fast we go through bidding, engineering, design. I know there's a design out there, but to make sure it's still legal, still ADA, all those kind of things that are implied in the work we're doing. Just to make sure and get everybody so they're agreeing on what they, every one of us has done something in our own home at one time or another, 5 years later says, I wish I would have put the door over there or something, or a window somewhere different. So make sure everybody's okay with the same concepts too.
So maybe, since we do have the strategic plan starting soon, and this is one of those projects that's been lingering for a long time, maybe there's a way to prioritize it and maybe there isn't that much for the strategic planners to do, but I think taking a real close look at the ADA accessibility issues, since we now have them on board and we're going to be paying them, to not get their input on that would seem to be like possibly a missed opportunity. And since we've already had a chance for public input, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't get more public input, but maybe this could be somehow streamlined, and I don't know what that would look like, but I think with strategic planning, just because you're planning, it doesn't mean that all projects have to stop, but at the same time, we want to take advantage of the benefits these planners might bring us. So I think that's something for the board to think about, and in the meantime, we could move forward with the permitting process, I suppose. I don't know what stage of plans you have to provide in order to reignite the permitting process.
Okay, so let's do I hear a motion here? I mean, I'm sorry, why don't you finish your comments, but we're moving towards, I think, either a motion or something.
It seems like we need to do more than just, what this is suggesting is that we revisit, and I'm hearing from pretty much everybody on the board that we want to do more than revisit. Can we take it to the next level? I don't know exactly what that is.
Okay, well, that's a good idea. That would have to be in the in a motion.
Right.
It would have to be a motion.
I don't have the right language for it, but what would that be? Any suggestions?
Reapply for the permit. Renew the permit.
I'm hearing, what I've heard across, the table here is, I've heard, an urgency to it. I've heard the certificate of exemption from the county to reactivate that. I'm hearing, it's what the general manager wrote on page 3 and 4. I mean, those are the next steps. So, we could take all of those, we could take some of those, we could take a combination. We could start with the exemption to get the ball rolling. We could allocate 200,000, less than 200. There's a lot of options here, and
well, I think we should get a bid to do it, and we should find out what the timeline is, how fast the turnaround could be in order to. Yeah.
Okay, I think there's a step before that. Mr. Grindy.
I think that the permitting is very important to start out with. Yeah. I think that what we should also do is have an engineer's estimate for construction costs, not a bid, because going out and getting bids, that's actually what's caused some problems over the decades here. People go out and get bids, now the contractor says, I'm never coming back again, they didn't do the job. So we have to start giving our contractors the benefit of the doubt, saying when we bid, we actually are going to hire somebody because of our public works type nature. So I would recommend in some mode, if we went ahead, to make sure we're getting the engineer's estimate.
Okay, so commissioners, what?
I think also what we're being constrained by is that we have a strategic plan that we just approved, and to align this project in that strategic plan is going to take some feedback and some input. Mm-hmm. But I maybe would like to start off by making a motion that we initiate the either a new permit or open up the existing permit for this project as a way of moving this project forward. I think I agree with the Harbor Master that the permit is probably the first step that's needed. Then after that, we can continue our discussions with the Wise Consulting.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Grinnell.
If I might suggest 2 amendments to Commissioner Paravano's motion, in addition to the permit step, which is an obvious first move. 2 more. One would be to pick up on Harbor Master Grindy's suggestion, which I strongly support, which would be to direct staff to bring the 5 lessees together and get real clear support on a clear concept so we're all on the same page. That would be the second item. And the third would be to get an updated engineer's estimate on cost. And that would give you all, you know, the basic information that you need to then say,
Thank you for
all
that.
right, let's go to
That's a
bid.
good idea. Thank you. Commissioner Brennan.
So one of the things that's happened in the past with these leasing meetings is they haven't been public, and I have concerns about that. I think that there should be a public process if there's going to be a meeting of the leasees. I, as a member of the public, would like to go sit in and listen to the meeting. I want to understand what everybody's issues are, because I care about, you know, what their issues are, and I can't possibly know if I can't sit in as a member of the public. So I don't want to have any private meetings amongst the leasees regarding this issue. This is public funds that will go to pay for a project that will provide accessibility to the public, and the meeting should not be private.
Thank you. That's a whole nother issue. So let's point well taken, but that's a whole nother issue right now.
I'm
to
prepared
what
to
the
make a
motion.
motion.
Yes, please.
And I didn't hear a motion actually from Commissioner Paravano. To the extent it is, I'd offer a friendly amendment, but I'd make the following motion. Number one, that staff be directed to seek renewal of the expired certificate of exemption immediately, or determine what is necessary to get a new certificate of exemption. Number two, to get an engineering estimate for the cost of the project as previously envisioned. Or currently envisioned. Number three, to involve the new consultants, the Weiss consultants, in this process to the extent that they are able to and is within the contract we have with them. And number four, to involve the lessees in the process to get input from the concessionaires that would all be directly affected by any expansion of the sidewalk.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second, and I just have one final comment. I've waited for commissioners to comment. I would like to just say a few things. I completely support this project, and the sooner we do it, the better, because here's the thing. We all know that every year that we wait and stall, and I know that 2008, there's nothing we could do about economic volatility, okay? I mean, who knows what's going to happen next year with the economy, but every year that we wait and delay, construction prices go up. So the sooner we get this done, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And I agree with Commissioner Brennan that yes, we do have a strategic plan process underway. Where I come from, you could do it at the same time. You have strategic planning going, and you still have operations at the harbor that still have to continue. So we could do it at the same time. So I'm totally in support. I'm going to support this motion enthusiastically. I just want this thing to just happen. So that's what I'm going to say. So let's have a roll call, please, because this is going to involve...
I just need one point of clarification. I believe those were amendments offered to the original motion.
No, the original motion had no second.
Right.
So it would be a new motion.
It's a new
So
motion.
it's a new motion from Holsinger and seconded by Tucker.
Thank you. I didn't know there was a call for seconds. I missed that. I apologize.
Thank you. So let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernard?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you to the Bothams for being here tonight and for waiting patiently. Thank you. We are now at staff reports, administration and finance, 14, 15, and 16, which is general manager, finance report, HR manager's report. Mr. Grinnell.
Yes, you have my report. I'll take any questions.
Okay, commissioners, any questions on general manager's report?
Go down there first.
Could we get an update, just real quick, on where we're at with the finger docks?
Okay.
I don't think we got to mine yet.
Oh, did I jump ahead?
Okay.
That's on the general managers too, but I could wait and ask for your report. Okay, never mind.
I have a question, and it may be that it's more suitable for the harbor master.
Okay, well then
Grindy.
let's move right ahead then to,
Let me just,
did you have
it's
something for?
part of District Manager Grinnell's report, which is simply the weather buoys. You have reported that they were going to address this need in April. It is now April, albeit only April 2nd. And so I want to specifically ask for an update on that, whether it's from the district manager or from the harbor master.
Yes, we were speaking with Congressmember Spears' aide just the other day at Farm Day, and learned that it looks like it might be in May. NOAA is being a bit recalcitrant.
For the record, let's hope there are no lost lives because of this delay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, moving right along, let's go to then Harbor Master Grindy's report. There was a question, Commissioner Brennan?
Just wanted to know how we were doing with the finger docks.
Waiting on the permitting process from Coastal Commission, and I believe if I read my notes right, about 2 weeks ago, which was the last one, it comes up, I believe, on the most northern meeting of the state, Coastal Commission, next time.
Humboldt or something?
Yeah, we hope it comes up on that one.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, on my report, you have my report. I'll take any questions, but I would like to bring up a few things before taking questions. As a heads up to the commission, staff today brought me a couple pictures. I didn't have time to print them and bring them before the meeting. But the Romeo Pier, or often called the Green Pier, more decking has fallen in, probably right after our windstorm. So I will be bringing back potentially some action items on that. The buildings and the pier is old. We need to save the pilings for potential growth in the harbor for a piling exchange piece. But when it comes to the buildings itself, it's time probably to start looking at tearing it down. It's just getting to that point where the good windstorms like we had last week and the week before are probably pushing it to the edge.
Okay, thank you.
The sewer, sorry, I'm looking at my own notes here, I'm forgetting. The sewer line project underneath the concession building is, for the most part, done. We're doing punch list right now. There is one section that we did not finish, and I'm going to be bringing back to the board the reasons why. It's a sink line drain, in other words, fresh water through sinks. And the problem was that this contractor is not a specialty contractor for regular plumbing. They're a liner contractor. And their change order proposal was way high. And so I would rather go back and get a contractor who is a plumber, who has a general contractor who would do all the tile work. It's a 40-foot run, and they wanted about $50,000 and change for a small run to replace it because the line is pretty much shot. Okay. And they were unable. So I would rather finish the project, come back and get that piece done when it's convenient to the Catch restaurant, being it's just a sink line. And I will bring that back to the next meeting for discussion. But the intent behind it is I do not see that having a major impact, but I don't want to have the Catch restaurant also being greatly impacted by downtime during the peak of the season too for that kind of drain.
Okay.
Will there be any change order deduction for the current contractor to eliminate that stretch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to be working through with that on credits, and
yeah.
There's always pluses and minuses because we actually had a couple locations that were not too prime for going through the floor when they had to jackhammer. It turns out one area was a loading dock at one time, didn't show on the drawings, and it was over 2 feet thick of concrete in a bathroom space that was 4 feet square. So they basically had to go vertically down to get through that concrete to get to the main line. And they were expecting 6 inches of concrete slab, not 2 feet.
Okay. Anything else?
I believe not. There is some notes on the Tiger grant, and so that came in as an additional item today, but just if you have questions on that, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
I just have a request in that regard.
Okay.
If you could, as you're progressing with your exploration of the grant, come back as a specific agenda item, generally for the entire commission, on that specific item.
We will.
Okay.
It'll be a fairly expedient presentation, it'll probably be at the next meeting, just because the deadline, it's a grant I've worked on before and been very successful, but the good part is we found out it's zero match for our neighborhood for Pillar Point. That'll help the fishing community and traffic in our community too.
Yeah, I anticipate, if I may, Mr. President, bringing a resolution to the board on the 16th for the Tiger Grant.
Thank you.
From the, so that the
Thank you. Yes,
commission.
it is Tiger Grant season for a lot of public agencies.
Yeah.
So anything else? Okay, thank you. Let's see. We are now at, sorry. Sorry, we are now at committee reports. And Harbor Commissioner's public statements, limited to 5 minutes. Commissioner Holsinger?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Commissioner Tucker?
I have nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Parvano?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to welcome back Debbie Nixon.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
And I understand everything went well, and it's a real treat to see you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brennan?
I just wanted to thank the staff for providing the summary of resolutions and some of the resolutions and AR reports via DVD. So thank you. I know that there was a lot of effort put into gathering this data, and I think it's great that we're going to have all this electronic eventually, because in the event of a fire like at Coastside Fire Protection District, oh no, I'm sorry, Coastside, what are they called? Water, right? CCWD had a fire and lost some important documents. So I'm really glad that the staff is protecting us from fire. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have none. So moving right along to just as we head into closed session, we have to identify district real property negotiator, so designate real property negotiator Peter Grinnell, and we are going into closed session now at 9:10 p.m. Okay, and then we will go back into open session afterwards. Thank you. Okay, we are back in open session at 9:36 p.m. And regarding closed session, what we are reporting out is purchase agreement for property at 504 Avenue, Alhambra, El Granada, San Mateo County. Parcel number 047-204-120, and basically what we're reporting out is the district is purchasing the property with $1.8 million in cash, contingent upon Department of Boating and Waterways approval, with a 30 days due diligence period, and also review and approval of all associated contracts by our legal counsel.
Point of information, it should be Division of Boating and Waterways.
Sorry, Division of Boating and Waterways. So that's our report out.
And council, is that a motion?
Yes, you should make that as a motion. It's a report out, but it also shows as item 21 on your open session.
Then I'll second the motion.
Thank you. That's a motion, and seconded by Commissioner Tucker. And let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight?
moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I hear a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Waiting for 10 o'clock.